The king is dead. Long live the king. Hey everyone, it's Nightharo here, and today I've got my Sorcerer tanking guide for you. So if you guys missed it, I did probably the most in-depth comparative analysis of tanking builds in ESO to date, just the other day. And clearly we saw coming out on top were three main classes. The top one, though, was the Sorcerer. The other three were the DK, or the other two, rather, were the DK and the Nightblade. Why did they come out on top? Well, specifically on the Sorcerer, you have a way of getting back just an insane amount of stamina. So you can convert your Magicka into just a ton of stamina. Yes, you have to drop block for a second, but that's half the time, or nearly half the time, that it would take you to do a heavy attack. Sorcerers just have a ton of survivability. They've got a ton of buffs. They got excellent sustain. They can regen stam on command, and they're also just really fun to play. So tons of reasons to recommend the Sorcerer. And, after I did that video, people were asking me like, hey, do you have a Sorcerer guide? Do you have a Sorcerer guide? And I was like, I need to get on that. So here it is today. We're just going to go ahead and jump in, and we'll start talking about gear and setup and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go pretty briefly on this, guys, because I've covered this stuff much more in depth in separate videos that are just kind of general tanking advice. So let's start out with gear and your traits. These are the same no matter what tanking class you're on. Your gear and what traits you have on it, generally speaking, does not matter, with very few exceptions, and Sorcerer is no exception, at least as far as that is concerned. So for our main tank setup, we're usually be running Lucent Echo, so we'll run that all 5-piece, always active. Doesn't have to be on your body, could be on your jewelry as well, but not on your weapons. And then we're going to backbar Saxhleel. Saxhleel will be a set that we can backbar, and then we can run something else on our front bar, depending on what we want to run. We just want to make sure that we're using our ultimate on that back bar, which is where it's going to be active at. That's very important. For our monster set, Tremor Scale, if you don't have an Alkosh DPS in your group, or otherwise Nazare if you do. For off-tank, we're running Pearlescent Ward, Powerful Assault. Pearlescent Ward is the always active set there. Powerful Assault we can backbar. We just need to make sure we have a skill on our backbar. I usually run Resolving Vigor to make sure we proc PA. And then we're going to run Nazare with that, or Archdruid, depending on what our main tank is wearing. For all of our traits, I personally recommend all reinforced to get up to resistance cap. Guys, I've done several videos talking about resistances and how to get there. I'll actually pop up here. Check out this video if you want the breakdown of it, but there's a lot of ways to get to resistance cap. There's not really a compelling, option for our body traits on all of our gear. So I think reinforced is probably the best thing. If you don't need reinforced because you're already at resistance cap for some reason, Sturdy also works really well for reducing our block costs. Also works well if you're newer, but you want to make sure you get to resistance cap first. And then if you want a little bit more Magicka, you can min-max and go all divines. Again, I strongly recommend reinforce for most people. For our weapons, on our front bar, it's really flexible. Whatever we want to run as far as our trait and our enchantment, there's a lot of valid options. Running a defending weapon can be a great way to help us get to resistance cap, whether that's a one-handed weapon or a two-handed weapon. You get a ton of resistances for that, and it's a great way to reach resistance cap. On our back bar, we always want to run a infused staff with the Crusher enchant. That's to help our group get full penetration. You'll be expected to be wearing this, so just make sure you always have it. And then for our jewelry, I recommend infused all the way across the board, and then with reduced cost, typically reduced spell cost. And the reason for that is while harmony is better in optimal situations, most of us don't live in that world, and you'll be yelling out and crying out for synergies and maybe still not getting them in most groups. So infused, I personally recommend for just about everybody. Later on, you might want to add in some harmony pieces for fights that are really stationary and where you're going to be getting plenty of synergies, or as your group gets better, they're tossing you more synergies and you're doing a better job of grabbing them. But for the average player, I really think infused is the way to go. I'm probably going to do a video kind of breaking that down and helping you guys kind of understand how to make that decision for yourself and when you should swap over, when it's appropriate and what have you. But it's a little bit outside the scope of this video. So again, infused all the way across. And then, if you want to run typically all reduced spell cost, you might want to throw in a reduced block cost if you feel like you're blocking a lot and your stamina's, really running down. You could also run never more than one. Typically, just one is usually enough. Or you could also run a tri-stat reduced cost to reduce your stamina cost abilities as well. If you're running Powerful Assault, for example, maybe you want that to reduce the cost since you're having to double cast Vigor fairly often. Okay, now let's move on to our CP. So for blue CP, Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, Ironclad, and Bulwark is what I recommend. These are pretty much the staples for all tanks, guys. You know, the main thing here is that direct damage, single target damage, those are all your heavy attacks, your light attacks, that's what they are. Bulwark just increases your resistances. You really want to get to cap, so it's pretty important. And then, you know, having a CP that reduces your AoE damage is just, I mean, I guess it's kind of a nice to have, but it's usually the one that I would drop first because most attacks are not AoE damage. So keep that in mind. Usually you can flex out one of these depending on the fight, but you have to know the fight and what kind of damage you're taking to figure out which one is like not super useful on any given fight. Again, a bit outside of the scope of the video to get too much in the weeds on that, but just know that that's kind of how it works. Now for slottable red CP. So fortified, extra armor, which gives you both resistances. It's what we want, you know, to make sure we get to cap. If we are at cap, we could swap this out for something else. Next up here, Shield Mastery. Shield Mastery I like because we're going to be casting a lot of shields on a Sorcerer, so reducing that cost by 10% is pretty significant. If you don't want or need that or just want some speed, Celerity is also one that I often recommend. I just really like having it. It's always nice being faster. It's a lot less important on a Sorc because we do have our Ball of Lightning, so we can, you know, teleport, essentially. So we don't need speed as much. Next up, and then we also have our Major Expedition via our Boundless Storm. Expert Evasion, it gives you a free roll dodge. I almost never take this off my bar. Even when I could, I usually like it so much that I just don't bother, just so I'll always have it on my bar. But the free roll dodge about every 30 seconds is really nice to have. And then last step here is going to be Bastion. Bastion increases the size of our shields by 15%. And the thing is with Sorcs, our primary shield, Hardened Ward, is literally twice as big as your like average damage shield, okay? So it goes from like 10k on your average damage shield to a little over 20k on the Sorcerer. So this would be an extra 3k-ish shield, pretty significant on a Sorcerer. And again, we're leaning into that shield playstyle quite a bit. If you don't want or need that, then you might go with something like Rejuvenation for a bit of extra recoveries. I think recoveries are much more important than having larger shields in general, but if you have enough recoveries, then might as well go with a bigger shield, right? For all of our attribute points, we're just going to put 64 points in health. I will say this, guys, depending on what your enchants are on your gear, usually what you want to do for your body pieces is just kind of alternate between magicka and stamina, but your goal is to have about 40 to 41k health, okay? A little bit over 40k health is usually a really solid place to be whenever you're fully buffed with food and everything else. So if you find that, hey, with 64 points in health, your health is way too high, first of all, check your armor enchants, make sure you're swapping between mag and stamina. And then the rest of that, you know, if you have a bunch of health enchants, you're going to have really high health. So if you find out that with 64 points in health, you've got way too much health, just move some over. Just make sure typically you have more stamina than magicka. That's really important because whenever you use certain synergies, you'll get back more of the higher resource, and you want that to be stamina in pretty much all situations. So just make sure that that is where it needs to be, and then just divide the points up equally. It's not really that big of a deal. Again, aim for about that 40k health mark. That's what's actually important, and that's going to vary depending on exactly what you're wearing. If it's a little bit higher, that's fine, but keep it between 40 and 45k. And then on fights when you need to you need your health to be lower, like Cloud Rest and certain other fights like Basai, then you change your food to something that doesn't give you extra health, and you're pretty much good to go. All right, for Mundus, we're going to go with the Atronach Mundus. This gives us extra magicka recovery. It's just the best thing to do on a tank. We really care about our recoveries. For race, I am currently recommending for just about everybody to run a red guard. And the reason for that is because the most important thing for a tank, even sweaty hard mode tanks or whatever, is getting back stamina while blocking. And that's what the Harmony Jewelry does, for example. So running a red guard is absolutely the way to go. I will say if you don't need the extra stamina recovery on a Sorcerer tank because you can get it back by hitting one button, you can get a ton of stamina back, then a Nord might be a more compelling option here. That will allow us to maybe change up some of our CP to get some of those shielding red CPs slotted in there along with rejuvenation or something. It's really a choose your own adventure here, guys, though. I just want to say there's not really a wrong answer. Maybe one of them is a little bit better than the others, but it really isn't that big of a deal. I would personally recommend leaning into the playstyle and playing the race that you really want. Breton is our second option here, you know, or maybe our third, because I mentioned Nord. Bretons just get a bunch of, reduced spell costs and a bunch of increased recoveries, and so Bretons are just really nice on a tank because almost all of our abilities we want them to be magicka costing so we can save all that stamina for blocking. Guys, on race, I've talked about this again at length in other videos. play the race you want to play. Anybody can get to resistance cap. You don't need to do anything crazy. You know, if you don't know, go check out the videos that I've covered that more in depth. But play the race you want to play. Most people care about, you know, if you like a Khajiit and you want to look at that cute tail, a lot of people, that's why they choose classes. It's totally fine. You're going to be able to tank all the content in the game. It's not going to be a big deal. For food, Jewels of Misrule is the cheap and kind of, that's what I use for just about everything. Gives you max health, and then it gives you stamina and magicka recoveries, not max stamina or max magicka, but just the recoveries, which is what we really want. We don't really care so much about our max resources on a tank. We care about our recoveries, except for our health. We want our health to be decently high because many of our heals and shields scale off of our max health. And then, you know, if you want the more expensive option, there's several, you know, Orzaga's options. Red Frothgar is one of them, so it'll give you back extra magicka. You know, it's up to you guys. Orzaga's just a lot more expensive. And then for potion, we're going to use Tristat, Essence of Health, gives you back magicka, stamina, and health. Best for our recoveries. No real, you know, nothing else really needs to be said. The Crown Tristat potions you get from, you know, daily login rewards are just fine. And then I just put resistance cap here, guys. You always want to make sure that fully buffed with major and minor resolve that we are at our resistance cap in content. Okay, so hit those buffs, make sure they're up on you, and then you can go check it out and make sure that you have them both. All right, now let's move on to the skills, the meat of the Sorcerer build here. So first up is going to be our primary heal. And this is a little bit different than on most other classes, okay? So we have Vibrant Shroud. This is what I prefer for once you have more experience, okay? Vibrant Shroud is the way to go. The reason for that, or really hard-hitting fights, if you can maintain it, the reason for that is that it applies Major Maim, and it's also AoE Major Maim, which is pretty cool. One of the few places, like class skills, you can get that in the game. Scribing, you of course can, but you know, it also provides us with Minor Vitality, which increases our healing received and our shields by 6%. And this is also it's kind of weak, but it is a group heal. You can absolutely hit your group with this if you're in like a dungeon or something and you're not running a healer, or even if you are and you just need to toss some heals. It's really expensive. I will note that, so it's not something you can just spam. Typically what I do is I use Vibrant Shroud to keep up Major Maim on the boss and to top myself off whenever I need a heal. I will note that the tooltip heal on this is only part of the healing received. We also have a passive from the skill line that will give us an extra about 5k health back as well. So this ends up being about a 10k heal overall, which is like, it's okay for a tank. You know, again, it's not super efficient, but it's usually enough. We're really going to lean into shielding a lot, so it's kind of fine for us to have a little bit more weak of a self heal in most situations. Now, if you aren't in one of those situations, you need a big heal, then you're going to use Dark Deal. Now, Dark Deal it is a channeled casting ability, so it does take 1 second to cast, and your block does drop during that time. However, you know, typically I don't recommend dropping block or having skills that you have to drop block. But however, in this case, it's only a second and it's going to give you a massive heal. You're going to heal for like 14 to 15k, which is about 50% more than you would get from your Vibrant Shroud. So a massive heal. It also gives you a ton of stamina back. So you trade Magicka for stamina and it gives you back a burst and then it gives you back a bunch over time. This is the skill that makes, you know, perma blocking or nearly perma blocking on a Sorcerer possible and makes them so survivable. Guys, 1 second to drop block, any fight, you can do that, okay? I know it could be tricky, and at first you might hit this when you're getting heavy attacked or something. It's going to be a learning curve, or it might be, but you can absolutely learn to use this, okay? Typically, I run one of these skills or the other, though, and another part of the reason we run this is there's a passive from the skill line, which provides major sorcery. It's the exploitation passive, so it provides minor sorcery for our group, increasing our spell critical for us and everybody around us for 20 seconds. So we need one of these skills on our bar at all times, and usually I pick one of them as my main heal to save bar space. You could also run both of them if you're in a fight where you really want that Major Maim, but you also want to be able to get some extra stamina back. That would be totally fine. Just slide it over to an empty spot and just hit it and use them as, you know, as needed. Oh, I should also note on Dark Deal, the other morph of this skill also works quite well, except for it costs stamina. Still heals you, but gives you back Magicka instead. If you're in a fight where you don't need a whole block very often, but you're casting a lot of skills, this could be a good way of giving yourself back extra Magicka. Both morphs of this are good. I think Dark Deal is generally the way to go, but you should be aware that both morphs are actually good. Now, other options here are the pets, right? They're either one of our Daedric pets can heal us. If we go the Unstable Clan Fear, it'll be a significant heal for about 15k. If we go with the Twilight Matriarch, it'll only be like a 10k heal, which is about what a Combat Prayer heals us for, about what our Vibrant Shroud heals us for, but it can also heal other people, up to 2 other people. The thing is with the pets, unless you have a reason like the Twilight Matriarch to heal other people, it takes up 2 bar spaces because you have to double bar the pets. Otherwise they disappear and you have to constantly recast them. Doesn't make any sense. Don't do that. So it's really just expensive as far as bar space, and we don't really need those heals because we can get it from Dark Deal if we really need the major heals. Again, yes, we have to drop block, but it's only for a second, and it's a massive heal. So just my opinion, but if you really want to run a pet, it's totally fine. This is where you'd slot it here, but you do need to have a skill, either Dark Deal or Vibrant Shroud to cast periodically to keep up those buffs for your group in any kind of optimized setting. Next up here is going to be Ulseald's Contingency. This is absolutely a flex spot. It's just really nice on a sorcerer. We can kind of stack shields and they work really well together. We're going to choose, again, the shield morph. Then we're going to choose Gladiator's Tenacity to reduce our damage taken by 8%. That's absolutely massive, guys. It works really well. And then we're going to choose to have Minor Intellect and Minor Endurance. So on most tanks, whenever you're choosing Ulseald's Contingency, this third option here, our affix needs to either be Minor Protection or Minor Resolve, but we get both of those via our Bound Aegis, which we'll talk about on our back bar, so we don't need to. Those minor recoveries, guys, are significant. An extra 15% magic and stamina recovery back, especially some fights we'll be getting those buffs from our group, but a lot of fights we will be on our own and we won't be getting it. And so honestly, it's almost worth running just for those extra recoveries. Our third skill here is going to be our Taunt. I personally really like right now double Ice Staff tanking. If you prefer the flavor or just the fun, or you just really want to be able to heavy attack to get back stamina, it's totally fine to run a sword and board. But it's just one or the other typically. And I really want to say that I strongly don't recommend running the shield throw. The shield throw is really fun, but you need some way of applying major and minor breach. And if you don't have that, and a lot of tanks that run shield throw don't find those ways of doing it, it's a more complicated playstyle, and I just personally honestly don't recommend it. For the meta setup, it is better to run double Ice Staffs. That's why I like it. I also think it's really fun, but I totally understand if you like the sword and board playstyle. Nothing wrong with running sword and board. I know I keep saying this, but I'm probably going to do a deep dive to kind of explain this to people, what our taunts do, because it's more than just which taunt to run. It affects what other skills we run and how we provide buffs and debuffs for the group. But again, it's a little bit outside of the scope of this video. If we have a taunt, it goes here. Our fourth skill here is going to be our bread and butter for as far as defenses, and that's going to be our Hardened Ward. So this is going to provide about a 20k, a little bit more ish shield, and if you have other CP and everything else, that can go higher. It also heals us for about 5k every time we cast it. So if we just took a little bit of damage, a lot of times I find myself just shielding to heal up for a little bit, and then the healers will top me off the rest of the way, and I never have to hit my shield. And that's why I tend to run Vibrant Shroud, where I cast it once every 10 seconds to keep up the buffs and debuffs, and then that's kind of it. And then after that, I'm mostly using Hardened Ward. I will also note that just having this on our bar will provide us with an extra 20% stamina recovery via the Daedric Protection passive. Just having a Daedric summoning skill on our bar, it gives us that bonus, and it's absolutely massive for our stamina recovery when we can drop block to recover that stamina. Hey guys, this is a really good time to say, if you like this video, yes, like and subscribe, but if you really like it and you think it could benefit somebody else, share the video. A lot of people don't know, but sharing is one of the best ways you can tell YouTube that, hey, this is a good video, because it's so good, it's worth sharing, and they'll recommend it to more people. Next up here is going to be Flare or Wield Soul. Flare is what we choose for really hard-hitting fights. It provides us with major protection, reducing our damage taken by 10%, and it also provides us, if we have our PvP skill line fully maxed out, it provides us, or at least level 9, I think, provides us with an extra 10% magic recovery, or 5% if we don't have that skill line maxed out, and we don't ever need to cast this. It just sits on our bar, does what we need it to do, and we don't have to worry about it. If you need a chain, this might be a flex spot, or if you're not in a hard-hitting fight, guys, you can swap out Flare, and you could throw on a chain, or really these flex spots, really anything you need. You could also swap out Ulseald's Contingency if you didn't need the extra shield, and you could put something like Wield Soul. Wield Soul, I personally recommend the pull, because you want to magic a chain, then the Druid's Resurgence for the extra recoveries. It runs 600 magic and stamina, and then I usually go with Major Cowardice here. And the reason I go with Major Cowardice is because the other really good option is probably Major Maim, but I think we can get Major Maim from other places, and certainly on the Sorcerer it would be our Vibrant Shroud, okay? So that'll just reduce enemies' weapon and spell damage, and that will make them hit less hard. So that's an option there. I will note kind of with the Sorcerer kind of playstyle, typically what I would do is Ulfsild's Contingency, Hardened Ward, and then just make sure I keep up my Vibrant Shroud buffs is typically how I run, and just lean into those shielding with Ulfsild's and with our Hardened Ward. Hardened Ward is much better of a shield if you're going purely for shields, but Ulfsild's is nice to kind of layer on top of it. And if you keep doing that, in general, you won't have to heal very much at all, because our Hardened Ward is healing us for a little bit. Our Vibrant Shroud, we hit it once every 10 seconds, heals us for a little bit, and then the shields are big enough that we don't really need to worry about healing ourselves otherwise. And then the last thing on our front bar here, we're going to run Barrier. And barriers ran the same reason that our flares ran, because it gives us passives, okay? That increases our Magicka recoveries, which is really what we want on a tank, because we're always going to be casting Magicka costing skills. All right, now moving on to our back bar. First up here is going to be our Blockade of Elements. Guys, you always want to have, there's 3 skills you always want to have down on a tank. You always want to keep Taunt. You always want to have your Wall of Elements down, or Blockade of Elements in this case. And then you always want to have Elemental Susceptibility on a target if you're running double Ice Staffs. If you're not running double Ice Staffs, then it's just the first two. You just need to keep Taunt and keep our Wall of Elements down. The reason for that, Wall of Elements, it provides us with, we have an infused Crusher on our back bar, which will reduce our opponent's resistances, and our entire party is counting on us to do that. That will increase our damage done by a significant amount. That will make fights go quicker, and the quicker a fight goes, the easier it is on you, the tank, okay? That's why we want it. It helps you out. So always keep your Wall of Elements down. It's just like Taunt. Once every 15 seconds, you got to have it down. It's just a best practice. Next up here is going to be Bound Aegis. Now, Bound Aegis is doing a ton of work for us. It provides us with Minor Resolve, which is awesome. We don't have to rely on a healer or anybody else to give this to us, even if we're outside of the group. And then it also provides us with Minor Protection, reducing our damage taken by 5%. Again, this is a passive. We don't have to do anything. It's just there for us. And then it also, if we actually cast this skill, it provides us with 40% block mitigation, which is insane. So this allows the Sorcerer to a lot of direct damage fights that you have hard-hitting fights. You don't have to roll. You hit Bound Aegis, you hold block, and you're good to go. And then afterwards, you need to recover. You hit your Dark Deal once, and you're pretty much good to go on stamina, and you're ready for the next fight, right? Or the next hard-hitting, round to come around. So Hardened Ward, absolutely amazing. Guys, if you are in a situation where you are just not getting hit that hard, you're really not worried, you're in trash, or you're just not worried about getting hit very hard, you absolutely can swap out Bound Aegis. You don't have to have it on your bar. It's really good and does a lot of really good stuff for us, so just keep that in mind. Our third skill here, so if we ran a Sword and Board on our front bar, we need a range taunt of some sort, and I recommend Frost Clinch. Put it here on your back bar. Any taunt is fine, but you want a range taunt at least on one of your bars. If you ran Frost Clinch on your front bar, I recommend Elemental Susceptibility, and the reason for that is because we need to provide major and minor breach to our party, and we got to do it somehow, right? So if we ran Sword and Board, Pierce Armor will do both of those for us. However, if we're not running that, we need some other source. Elemental Susceptibility provides us with major breach, and then as long as we're applying the chilled status effect to targets in our Wall of Elements, we're also going to provide minor breach as well, and that comes from our Blockade of Elements. If you read the tooltip, it says it there. It's a little bit ambiguous, but that's where it's coming from. This also provides us with that chilled status effect if we are double Ice Staff tanking, which provides us with minor brittle, increasing our critical damage done to an opponent by 10%. So that's pretty significant, and why it's like a little bit more optimal to run double Ice Staffs. And since we have such an easy way with getting back stamina, I like to do that on my Sorcerer, but again, it's totally up to you. Our fourth skill here, we always need on every tank class, we need some source of major resolve. And for us, it's going to be our Boundless Storm. So Boundless Storm, whenever we cast it, does give us major expedition for the 4 seconds after casting it, which is kind of nice. If we ever need a brief speed buff, we can recast Boundless Storm to give us that buff. Places like Cloud Rest, whenever we're running, Zamaja, so that she doesn't zap the party, we can run all the way around her, is a good example. Although a lot of times we can use something like Ball Lightning, so we can literally teleport, so it's less needed. I will say that, they've finally gotten all the tank classes where your class source of major resolve actually provides you with some other buffs other than just that major resolve. I will say on the Sorcerer, because we do have Ball Lightning, we can teleport, aka Streak, right, guys? The other morph of it. We don't really need the speed very much. And so this actually is a situation where if we wanted to run the Mage's Guild skill balance, balance costs health and then gives us back Magicka as well as providing us with that major resolve. So this allows us to trade health for Magicka, and then via our Dark Deal we can trade Magicka for stamina and health. Those two skills together mean you can permanently sustain yourself on a Sorcerer tank, and it's why it's so amazing. So absolutely a skill you might consider swapping in here, but you got to have Mage's Guild at a fairly high level. Not everybody's going to have that, and do you really need it? I think in a lot of situations you won't, so it won't be that big of a deal. And then our fifth skill here up. This is another flex spot. Okay, so typically what you'll find, guys, is there's 3 skills on your front bar that absolutely don't go anywhere, and then there's usually 2 to 3 on your back bar that never go anywhere, like our Wall of Elements and our Source of Major Resolve. Even if we swap it out with another skill that does the same thing, so it's kind of like it's not really a flex spot. We always have to have something like that on our bar. But our fifth spot here, I really like running around with Ball Lightning. You don't need to. It's not a necessary skill, but this is our flex spot, and it's just a kind of fun and nice skill to have. If we're running something like Powerful Assault, we need a skill to proc that. Resolving Vigor is typically what I run, just for the nice heal over time. Whatever you want, though, anything you need to flex in, this is a great spot for it. And then for Ultimate on their back bar. So Sorcerer tanks, or Sorcerers in general, whenever you cast your Atronach, and I'm recommending the charged Atronach, it provides, somebody in your party can hit the synergy and provide Major Berserk, increasing your damage done by 10%. There's not really a lot of good places to get this buff, and so a Sorcerer is almost always providing it for your party. So you as the tank will often be asked to run this instead of Warhorn so that you can provide that unique buff depending on how many Sorcerers in group and depending on what your raid lead runs. So just keep that in mind. Pretty nice to have. And then, the alternative there is running aggressive Warhorn, which will just give your party buffs. It's just the most optimal thing to do for your party's damage. Now, let's go ahead and move on and talk about a few useful skills. First up here, if you need AoE Major Breach, you're going to use Razor Caltrops. This is from the PvP skill line, and it's a really nice skill, AoE Major Breach. Use it in trash, many other places. After that, we have Defensive Stance. Defensive Stance is a very niche skill, but you can use this to reflect Locustes, the Ice Dragon. You can reflect their attacks back at them. It also reduces the cost of block and increases the amount you can block. Typically with Bound Aegis, we don't really need this on a Sorcerer, but I just want to mention it here. These useful skills are just kind of like, I don't want you to be in a situation where you're asked to have a skill and you don't have it. That's why I have these over here. I would also recommend Suppression Field. So this is another ultimate. There are some mechanics that you completely negate with Suppression Field. It's really hit and miss, but it's a fun skill to have, so I just want to mention it. If you want to know, does it do X skill, come by the Discord, guys, because I don't earn X ability. I don't know what all this works on. I just know that there's a handful of things that are kind of fun and kind of useful, so just keep that in mind. Crystal Weapon. Crystal Weapon, if you need a little bit extra penetration, you can use this to give an extra 1k penetration to your group. Honestly, guys, typically you don't need this. It's really weird and awkward to build around. And so usually you're either way over or you're way under. If you're way under, sure, it'll help you. If you're way over, it's not going to do anything for you. So you just have to check with your DPS there. And then the fifth skill here is Overflowing Altar. This is really good. So someone in your group needs to be running this. Typically it's a healer, but if you're in a pug or if you're running a no healer in dungeons or something, having Overflowing Altar out can absolutely save your group, save your DPS from dying, maybe even healer. So just keep that in mind. It's just a nice flex skill. If someone else is running it, you really don't need to, and ideally they would. But again, a lot of dungeon situations, fake healers, what have you, you're absolutely not going to have it. Hey guys, if you're interested in supporting the channel here, consider becoming a channel member or donate on Ko-fi. Getting direct support from you guys is really what allows me to continue to make these videos, and I appreciate all of you guys, all the channel members and Ko-fi supporters. I love you guys to death. Thank you so much. There's nothing I would rather do than make, guides and talk about video games, and I appreciate you guys allowing me the chance to do that. And that's it for skills, guys. Now let's talk about how you use your Sorcerer tank, okay? So on your back bar, these are your typically long duration skills. You switch to your back bar and cast these when you need to, And then as soon as it's done, you switch back to your front bar. Your front bar is your damage mitigation bar. That's the bar that you sit and spend like 75 to 80% of your time on, and it's what's going to keep you alive. Okay, hit that hardening word whenever you need to. Make sure you keep up your boundless storm for that major resolve. Make sure you keep your taunt up, wall of elements, elemental susceptibility if you're running it, and you should be good to go. Anyways, that's it for this video today, guys. If you have any questions, come to the Discord. I'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions. We got a bunch of really smart people. We have help channels for all roles, and we can give you specific advice, or if you have any questions, or of course, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.